Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. In this video, we're going to be doing a Sub DPS Showdown between 3 of the best teenage Sub DPS characters in the game, Fischl, Xingqiu, and Xiangling. As always, we need to familiarize ourselves with our contestants. Starting off with everyone's favorite Genshin Chunibyo, we have Fischl, the Prinzessin der Verwurtelung, with her faithful translator Oz. Fischl has been a staple, off-field sub DPS character ever since Genshin Impact's release. Also, much to Fischl's chagrin, did you know that her real name is actually Amy? Throughout this video, Amy will be using a Refinement 5 Skyward Harp. For her artifacts, she is using the 2-piece Gladiators and 2-piece Thundering Fury. She's at Constellation 6 and her talents are at 9, 12, and 11. Amy's translator's damage potential is at 75%. Next, we have Teyvat's only known teenage Michelin star chef, Xiangling. Upon release, most people overlook Xiangling's potential in favor of other main Pyro DPS characters. However, nowadays she is finally getting the recognition she deserves. With her trusty Guoba, who has a PhD in auto-targeting, and a magical burning spinning spear that spins around her, Xiangling has been mercilessly cooking her opponents and serving them to her customers. My Xiangling will be using a Refinement 5 Staff of Homa, and she has the 4-piece Crimson Witch of Flames for her artifacts. She is at Constellation 6, and both Guoba and Pyronado are at level 12. My Xiangling's damage potential is at 80%. And last but not least, we have the unexpectedly popular and Inazuma author, Xingqiu. Besides writing and reading books, our rich merchant's son finds the time to support every person in Teyvat that has a Pyro vision. New Pyro character? Better call Xingqiu because you're going to want to get on that waiting list. Xingqiu is using a Refinement 5 Primordial Jade Cutter. Keep in mind that most of the clips in this video were gathered prior to the release of Inazuma, so he is using the 2-piece Heart of Depth and 2-piece Noblesse Oblige. Also, he is using an Energy Recharge Timepiece, because playing Xingqiu without Energy Recharge is very painful. He's at Constellation 6, and his talents are at 2, 11, and 12. Factoring in the Energy Recharge Timepiece, my Xingqiu is at a remarkable 85% damage potential. Now let's quickly go over the methodology in this video. Considering both Fischl and Xingqiu need someone to attack the target in order for their abilities to work properly, Zhongli will be taking all 3 of them out on a field trip. He is built for very low damage with a Refinement 1 Favonius Lance, so that way the kids can have fun with their sub DPS showcases. Also, Xiangling will be at under 50% HP since she is using the Staff of Homa. Now, where would one of these videos be without the disclaimers? First and foremost, this video is not to say which sub DPS character is the best. In fact, out of all my DPS Showdown videos, I'd say this one is one of the worst indicators of how these characters perform relative to each other. The reason is that despite all being off-field sub DPS characters, they are all used in very different ways, supporting very different teams. Nonetheless, I think this is an interesting comparison between the 3, to see how much damage they do off-field, and also to see how they amplify their team's damage. As always, each of these runs were done multiple times and I simply selected the best times for each of them. Each of these runs were my best faith attempt to do them, and it's likely there are some oversights. Let's start off with your favorite volunteer, and my favorite volunteer, and everyone's favorite volunteer, the Cryo Regisvine. As usual, the Cryo Regisvine has such a small HP pool that even a burb who somehow spits lightning loogies was able to take it out in 11.5 seconds. Amy's pet bird and translator, Oz, truly had a shocking performance. Xiangling is similar to Fischl in that she also has a pet Guoba. Thanks to Guoba's PhD in auto-targeting, he was able to successfully target the massive and immobile Cryo Regisvine 2 inches away from his face. Xiangling's second pet, her mythical Flaming Spear, and pet Guoba roasted our poor plant friend. With nearly 100% crit rate and 6,746 damage water sword, it's to no one's surprise that somehow throwing water at a massive sentient lettuce monster would send it to the afterlife. Xingqiu's performance really dampened the mood. And now for my more recently actual favorite new volunteer, the Primo Geo Vishap. Given the length of this fight and the Primo Geo Vishap's large HP pool, it's important to battery Xiangling throughout the fight, since with just her raw pyro damage, she's not able to take out the Primo Geo Vishap in one cycle. We absolutely need to properly battery her. Nonetheless, Xiangling and her Guoba pet made quick work of the Primo Geo Vishap, and with some better battery rotationing to get Xiangling's burst a little bit faster, she could have saved a couple seconds here or there. Xingqiu has a similar problem to Xiangling, in that given the massive HP pool of the Primo Geo Vishap, he needs to refill his burst. However, unlike Xiangling who has a Bennett to battery her, Xingqiu without an energy recharge timepiece is pure suffering, and you would need 3 of his elemental skills in order to fill his burst. But with the energy recharge timepiece, 2 of his E's plus some additional particles through Favonius and miscellaneous stuff is enough to get his burst back up again. And once his burst is back up, so is the Primo Geo Vishap's fear of death. You may have noticed that Amy managed to close the gap in her time in comparison to the other 2. Over this long of a fight, Amy has incredible uptime on Oz with no need for a battery, unlike the other 2 sub DPS characters. By simply using her E first, then her burst, then her E again, Amy has around 36 seconds of lightning puking bird uptime, which was just enough to eke out the KO versus the Primo Geo Vishap. The next volunteer is an interesting one, and not necessarily because of the fight itself, but because of something else. Let me know if you can spot what's weird about this Magu Kenki. That's right, it's the Muppet from the Golden Apple Archipelagos. In case you're wondering why that's the case, it's because of something called procrastination. I actually gathered these clips from way back then, but forgot about this video until recently, and I was graciously reminded of these characters by people in my Discord. Oh yeah, a link to my Discord will be in the description below. Anyway, you may have noticed that Fischl's ability to reposition Oz was helpful in this fight, due to the Magu Kenki's fondness of moving all about. I'm sure there are many ways to shave off a couple seconds here or there, but oh well, I think you get the idea. As for her chef, who now wants to cook a sentient Muppet, by opening up with 2 Baron Bunnies with Amber, I was able to get a ton of free pyro particles for Xiangling. You may have noticed something about Xiangling, and that is her insatiable appetite, not for food, but for energy. Anyway, with a Sacrificial Sword Bennett, double Favonius on Zhongli and Amber, and multiple Baron Bunnies, Xiangling was able to get her burst for a second time. However, I realized after trial and error that I had to wait for Magu Kenki to teleport. Otherwise, I'd spend those precious pyronado seconds chasing it down, and with quite a bit of luck from Magu Kenki dragging me with it, Xiangling's pyronado was able to cook our favorite residential Muppet. Xingqiu's elemental skill has been putting in some serious work in the last few runs that I forgot to point out until now, doing 38,000 damage a pop. and now with Zhongli's shield, and each of his sword thingies doing 7.4 thousand damage, it's to no one's surprise that Magu Kenki's first form was taken out so quickly. Again, thanks to the energy recharge and cycling through Favonia's supports, Xingqiu got his burst up again so that he could throw our favorite residential Muppet into the washer. So is there anything to be gained from all these runs? Well, from a raw elemental single target DPS perspective, surprisingly, both Xiangling and Xingqiu are close to each other, and appear to do slightly more damage than Fischl does. However, Fischl's damage potential is a bit lower thanks to my far inferior Thunder and Fury artifacts, as well as very poor Electro Goblet. It's also worth noting that both Xiangling and Xingqiu are extremely energy hungry, unlike Fischl. But now let's take a look at how much each of these characters enhance and enable an on-field DPS character. We'll take a look at how Fischl improves Eula's damage, how Xiangling improves Childe's damage, and how Xingqiu improves Batman's damage. Starting off with Eula's burst. Well, with or without Fischl, Eula is able to one-shot the Primogeo Bishop. However, thanks to Super Conduct, I'm able to run much more crit rate on my Eula for the same effect. This allows for a much appreciated quality of life improvement. Now, more interestingly in my opinion, is if we don't use Eula's burst at all, and thus we can see how much Fischl improves just raw physical damage auto attacks. Thanks to both Eula's auto attacks doing more damage as well as Oz's own damage, Eula was able to complete this fight much more quickly. The fight with Fischl actually took out the Primogeo Bishop before it even used its Celestial Shower. Considering Celestial Shower deals around 15% of the Primogeo Bishop's hit points, if we calculate the DPS improvement, Fischl improved Eula's auto attack DPS by 55.58%. This is very admirable for a bird whose day job is translator for a princess. Next, let's take a look at Childe. For Childe's demo, I'll be using him with Bennett, but without Xiangling. Then we'll compare him with Xiangling as well. Trust me, you do not want to watch Childe solo beat up the Primogeo Bishop without Bennett. We'd be here all day until Fischl finally admits her name is Amy. With Bennett's help, Childe was able to take out the Primogeo Bishop in 20.85 seconds. Now let's compare the Xiangling-less run to a run with Xiangling. Holy guacamole, Xiangling turned that 20.85 second run into an 8.73 second run. After normalizing the Primogeo Bishop's Celestial Shower, Childe without Xiangling was doing 31,799 DPS. With Xiangling, that jumped to 89,313 DPS, a massive 280.87% of his Xiangling-less run. In summary, Xiangling nearly tripled Childe's team's damage output. Last but not least, let's take a look at our Batman LARPer Diluc. Oh, that was agonizing, watching Diluc's solo performance without his Robin, but still with his Bennett. But on the flip side, with Robin at his side, Diluc's performance gain was astronomical, even higher than Childe's performance gain. Thanks to vaping a ton of his damage and Xingqiu's very impressive own vapes and single target damage, Diluc saw a colossal 314.66% of his solo performance's DPS. Man, Diluc and Xingqiu really are like Batman and Robin. In the end, here is a summary of the results of my testing. All in all 3 of these characters have strong roles that they can each fulfill. However, I was surprised that Amy's translator Burb's single target DPS was lower than the other 2. Xiangling's performance was also interesting to me because Guoba actually hits pretty hard and makes up a non-negligible portion of Xiangling's damage. As for Xingqiu, his performance was mostly in line with what I expected, having generally the highest single target DPS, although admittingly he did enhance Diluc's performance more than I expected. Another thing to note about these 3 characters is that Fischl is not as energy dependent as the other 2. Xiangling and Xingqiu require a ton of energy to be funneled to them, and Xingqiu is practically unusable without energy recharge. So there you go, a different type of Sub DPS showdown between 3 of the most popular teenage Sub DPS characters in Genshin Impact. What do you think about the results? Be sure to smash that subscribe button as I make regular Genshin Impact content in a bunch of different DPS showdowns. The next DPS showdown will be between Yoimiya, Diluc, and Hu Tao. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.